Welcome back, guys. Today's video is going to be another episode about our smalls that sell. For those that have not seen any of the videos in this series, it's all about taking what is hot right now online or in the big box stores, breaking these items down so we can put our own twist to it and build these things at home. I have several ideas to talk about today, so let's go ahead and jump into it. And for our first item, this came straight from the OPB. We have a decorative paddle. So does this general shape look similar to other items that have been hot in the past, like charcuterie boards, cutting boards, and then it eventually evolved into a cheese board? So now from the marketing aspect, they realized that the market is getting saturated with each one of those things. So now they came up with this decorative paddle. They're not calling it anything, but you can use it for anything. So you can actually use it for all of those different items, which I don't care if you call it a cheese board, I don't care if you call it a cutting board, whatever, you can use it for all of those things. But by changing the name, it seems like they have created a new item. So what caught my eye about this decorative paddle, that it is different than anything else that we've actually seen. And now they are stepping it up and giving it a rustic repair look. So back in the day, whenever you would bust a table, bust a piece of wood, if you could not cut dovetails and put those in, you did this. You would bend over a nail or a piece of metal, whatever that you had, drive it into both edges of the split, and it would keep it from splitting more. Seen this done before on super old farmhouse tables, but never on a cutting board. I'm just going to call it a cutting board from here on because I don't like saying decorative paddle. I mean, it sounds like you're about to whip somebody with it. So really the only difference in this and other cutting boards or charcuterie boards or whatever that you want to call it that we've covered in the past is that split end. This is awesome because oftentimes when we're working with wood, these are the pieces that we're just going to toss that are naturally split. So as far as the outline and the design of these things, you already know how to do it. There's a million videos out there and we've actually covered it ourselves. It's super easy, especially on these one plank boards. So if you're wanting to replicate this, of course you have to have an end cut with a crack in it. Well, we're not going to have a ton of those, so you can make your own. That's all that you'd have to do is take your plank of wood, maybe put one end in a vise and just start bending it a little bit. Be careful, do not bend it too fast or it will snap all the way. Let's say that if you're using something like pine, and if the pine's grain goes all the way up, it's going to split completely in half. If you notice on a lot of these, there's a swirl in the grain. That's what's going to help stop that crack from going up. Or if you notice in a lot of these, it's a fibrous type of wood like this oak. So it's not just going to snap. Those fibers are going to want to help to hold that together. So if you're creating your own crack, maybe try to use a wood that's kind of similar to that. So once you have your crack material, be it a scrap piece of wood or something that you have put the crack in, now we need to create this stitched look. And it looks like what they have actually done is they've used some type of a thin square stock. Closest thing that I could think of. Now help me out here. If you guys can think of anything that's kind of thin and square, drop it into the comments because I was drawing a blank on that. What they used to do back in the old days, they would take a square nail. You still buy these square nails. They may be listed under horseshoe nails, but what they would do is they would take these and they would actually bend these to make a staple. So whatever you decide to use, you can use this. You can actually use a new steel nail. See where I just bent that end. Depending on where you're at on the gap, put this in a vise, pair of channel locks, whatever. Then you just bend this down, snip off the end to make a staple. Paint it black. No big deal and super cheap. Instead of hammering this in, go ahead and pre-drill a hole on both sides of that crack that is the same distance as your staple that you have made. Put it on your board, mark it, drill a hole on each side of that crack, put in a little bit of epoxy adhesive on both sides, and just slide this right in. Let that dry, you're good to go. Finish this out. Really, you can finish it out in any way that you would like. Since this is technically not considered a cutting board, it's a paddle, and it's really mainly for decoration or for a serving tray. Most likely they just applied like a clear polyurethane finish on this. But if you'd like to make it to where people can cut or eat off of, then you'd use like a cutting board or something like that. Either way, super easy to make. And the handles, any shape that you want. As you can see, they just kind of cut whatever shapes that they would like. You can do the same. And for the tops, that's all that they have done is drilled a hole and put a leather strap in there. You can pick this stuff up for super cheap off of any craft store or off of Amazon. And after I thought about it, as far as the crack goes, you could actually use this leather strapping instead of any kind of a metal. Drill your holes all the way through, then you could run your stitching design all the way down. And depending on the pattern that you want, if you want this pattern where it's just the flat bar look, then you would just feed it in and put your cross section in the back, go down, back over. Or if you actually wanted the stitched look where it crosses, then you would just thread these through in the opposite way. Then you would just run that pattern on the top. So that was just a quick idea, and I think that I like the leather idea better than that one. Either way, it's a super cool product. Though PB is wanting $80 per paddle, and they've created different size paddles because people will buy 2 or 3 to set around their house. So $80 a piece. If it were me, I would try to move these in the $30, $40 range and sell them as sets. So this is another one from the PB, and I had to throw this one in here since we're already talking about this decorative paddle, serving tray, whatever they want to call it. Now they have also came up with this style. Okay, so they're calling this a modern cheese board because the dimensions are 1.5 by 7.5 by 26 inches long. That is a 2x8. Look at it. It's just a square 2x8. It's either pine or fir, but it is a 2x8. So for $130, they are selling a 26-inch piece of a 2x8 with a hole cut in the end. And they're calling it a modern cheese tray. Calling it modern just because all of the edges are perfectly square. We don't have the contours, we don't have the curves, we don't have all of that. It's just square. Even the handle that's cut into it is more of a square shape instead of the rounded shape. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. I just had to throw this in there. This is pretty self-explanatory on how you do this. You finish it with some type of a board oil. I do not know how well these things would sell. I know that they are selling them or it would not be on their site or in their stores. But like I teach, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't like it. So give it a shot. And this next one, a wooden star. We've talked about these types of items in the past that have always been popular and pretty much always will be. The nautical themed items, star items, hearts, things like that. But what got my attention on this one is it was listed as a bestseller. It is completely made out of plywood, and they are wanting $68 for this thing. Yes, it's 3/4 inch plywood, and 3/4 inch plywood is expensive. But this doesn't even look like cabinet grade plywood. It just looks like plywood. But regardless, this is a 24 by 24 star. In the previous video, I actually taught you guys on how to draw a perfect star of any size. So if you're interested in something like this and you don't know how to draw a star, you can check that out. But the cool thing about this is that it can be completely cut out just using a jigsaw, regardless of whether you want to make the version where they have cut the center out as well, making this negative space star, which is pretty cool. Or if you just want to make the solid version with no negative space and put some type of writing or saying on that. So let's say that you wanted to make this star with the negative space. And the only thing that you have to use is a jigsaw. You're really not going to be able to save the cutout from the middle, which would be super awesome because you would actually have 2 products to sell. You can sell the main outline and then the part that you cut out. There is a method that you could use with a jigsaw where you actually walk the blade into the wood, but I'm afraid with plywood it may create too much of a tear out. If you have a router, you could, however, cut this out with a router and be able to keep that center part, or if you had an oscillating tool with a wood bit on it, you could cut this out with that as well. But regardless of whether you keep the center or not, the next thing that you would do for this star is to stain or paint it. And it actually looks like they want people to see that it's plywood. I don't even know what kind of a look that you would call that. I don't know if it would be like a modern industrial or whatever, but they are making zero attempt to hide that it's plywood. If you actually look at the edges of this, you can see where all the different layers are glued up, which is obviously plywood. So maybe this is an end thing. If it is, let me know because I have no clue. So these are 24 by 24, so they're very large stars, and that's why these things are selling. So if you use those dimensions and you just start with 2 by 2 squares, you can get 8 of these out of a sheet of plywood. They're wanting almost $70 for each one of these. If it were me and they were stained or painted, I would try to move these right around the $30 mark. And that would still leave a ton of room for profit. So this next one I really, really like, and I know that they would sell like crazy. And that is this pallet wood wooden flag. Okay, so I know that there are tons of versions of wooden flags out there, but there's just something about this. So this would be your perfect pallet wood project because pallet wood looks just like this. It already has the nail holes. It's kind of beat up and you want to leave all of that in there. You could easily replicate that if you wanted to make this out of fence pickets, but for this one, it may just be easier using pallet wood. They are wanting $150 for this flag, and honestly, I don't think that they're too far off. If I were making these to sell, I would probably try to move them right around the $100 price point, and it's because it's different. You do not see these everywhere. And I guess one of the reasons why I really like this look is because it reminds me of the inside of an old house that had like the shiplap and the plaster. Okay, so if you've ever seen behind one of those walls or if you've taken off all the plaster, it's a big mess, but if you've ever done it, you know what I'm talking about. It's just those thin strips about 2 inches wide with about 1/8 of an inch gap in between, and it just creates this cool vintage look. So let's talk about how they put all of this together. So obviously you can see that they've used the strips on top, but it also has a border around it. Okay, we're not going to put the border on yet. If you look through those cracks, you can actually see vertical strips. You can make these flags any size that you would like, to whatever width that you would like this to be. You can go ahead and cut 3 strips for the back. using the same material that you're going to use for the top. And these strips are just going to be connecting strips. It is what is holding all of these strips together. So you'll need one on each end and one in the center. Then you'll just space those out to the length that you want. So the halfway point is where they ended their section for the stars. So starting from the bottom, I'd take a 48-inch strip. The thickness of these strips really do not matter as long as they are the same. And I would attach it to the bottom to all three of your horizontal boards. And really for something like this, rustic is fine. You can use brad nails and wood glue to do this. Then you would just continue adding these full-length strips up into the point of where you would like your stars to begin. This is roughly the halfway point. Looks like that they actually have one extra strip for the star section. Now, once you're up to that point, whatever length that you decided on, let's say the 48, you're just going to cut 24-inch strips to finish the right-hand side. And we will use the same spacing as you did for the bottom. You want to actually be able to see through this. So now you've attached the complete right-hand side as well. Now for the stars panel. Whenever I say panel, so it's all that they have done is taken those 24-inch pieces and then stacked them flush on the left-hand side all the way to the top. As far as the star pattern itself, that is paint. So it's all that they have done is taken a stencil. Again, you can pick these up off of Amazon for dirt cheap in about any size that you would like. And most likely before they nailed them to this, they had all of those boards off to the side, put the stencil on, add some white spray paint to it, and then attach those boards to their flag. So at this point, you have all of the front made and the back. And now that's all we need to do is put on our side border. And really the only reason they put this side border on is to kind of hide the underboards. So to me, it looks like the border is just about an inch, maybe an inch and a half wide. They did not even miter the corners. These are just butt joints. They're going for that rustic primitive look. So now you would just add your border covering all those edges that we're talking about, and then just attach this border using brad nails and wood glue, and make sure that you get a nail or two into each one of these horizontal strips. Again, they want $150 for this. I'd put these out there at about $100 a piece, and you don't even have to put a finish on it. Okay, so this next one, they are marketing these as mountable boxes, and they're super cool. And yes, everyone loves boxes, and I cover a lot of different things on crates and boxes. It's just because it's an evergreen type of an item. You can sell it year round, and it always stays in style. But this design I have not seen before. They've actually integrated hardware cloth into the edges, and then you have your typical ends. That makes it different. That makes it marketable, and that is what is making these things sell. So let's go ahead and discuss these ends. And similar to other crates and boxes that we've done before, solid wood is about 4 inches wide and about 8 inches long. And then that's all that they have done is cut a handle into it. So to cut this handle in, I would measure in a couple of inches from each side, measure about an inch down from the top, and that would leave you with 4 inches of handle. So I would center that in, mark the edges where you're going to cut that out. The two outside edges, I would use a spade bit. Whatever thickness that you would like this handle, let's say if you wanted an inch opening, then just use an inch spade bit, Forstner bit, whatever that you would like on each end. And then take a jigsaw and connect those two holes, removing that center part. Then you would just repeat that for the other side. So now let's get down to how they actually put this hardware cloth in there. So first of all, you just need to decide what size hardware cloth that you want to use. You can pretty much pick it up at any type of hardware store, but the squares that make this up are different sizes. And if you look at this, it looks like that the hardware cloth is actually made into the wood itself. And what they did to get that nice clean look is super simple. You need to make a groove in your material, and this is simple to do. So all that you have to do is set your table saw to where it is in the center of the board that you're cutting, and then set your depth. That's all that it will take for this design, is about 1/4 of an inch of depth, because each one of these strips around the hardware cloth, since the total height is 4 inches, those are only about inch wide strips. So instead of trying to cut your two long pieces, the top and the bottom, and then your two side pieces into little pieces and then run them through your table saw, just cut one long strip, run this groove, which is the thickness of your table saw blade, through the center of this entire board, and then you can cut your parts to size. So if this box is 12 inches long and the handle parts are on the outside of this, let's say that you're using 3/4 of an inch material, the horizontal side strips are going to be 10.5 inches long each, and then your two small vertical strips are only going to be 2 inches long each. And I know my example is wider boards, but whenever you set these on top of each other, and again, these are just butt joints, it's going to sit like this, but the inside would look like that. That is where your hardware cloth is going to go. So you cut your hardware cloth to size, go ahead and insert it in between your two long boards. Then you would just slide your inboard over on each side, locking in that hardware cloth right into those little grooves that you've made. And that's all that they have done to lock these into place. Because these strips are only an inch wide each, they fasten this together with brad nails and wood glue. That's all that there is to the side panels, which is the main part of this thing. So you have two end pieces and you have two side panels made. The side panel, if you look at the edge, will have this little cut in it. But No one will ever see that because of the design of this box. The handle boards or the end boards will go over that part, hiding all of that. And that's all that they have done is put that together with some wood glue and some brad nails. As far as the bottom goes, you can use whatever material that you would like to inset that, throw in some brad nails, or you could take some 1/4-inch plywood and nail it to the bottom like they did. So if that came across as sounding difficult, I promise you that it is not. And when you're done, you're going to have a super cool, unique crate, basket, whatever you would like to call it, and they will sell like crazy. For this last one, I've had a ton of people comment saying that they have laser cutters at home and we're wanting some creative ideas to use that for. So if you have one at home, let me show you a couple of things that I've been seeing on almost every site. So I've never been comfortable with lasers because I've never used them. But after a few months of using my Thunder laser, it's pretty cool. So I'm going to head over there and we're going to talk about this first one. So this first one is going to be basic signs, okay? Except you're going to make them large. You're going to make them bigger. What I'm seeing a ton of is one-word statements. So like this. This is just hello, but it is a 16 by 15 cutout. I've seen different variations of just this one word on several sites. On all of the different sites that I have found these, they were wanting between $50 and $75 a piece. And this next style is super cool, and I've seen it everywhere, and it's always on people's bestseller list. They've used a laser to etch the wooden parts of these designs. For everything that hangs over the wood, it's actually metal. But what if we use our laser cutter to cut this out of a thin piece of plywood and just paint it a color to match what we have burnt? Attach it to the sides, and you'd have an awesome piece of art that's selling for upwards of $75 a piece everywhere that I've seen them. So that's just a couple of ideas that I've ran across and thought about you guys out there that had laser cutters. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video and you were able to take something from this, apply it to an idea that you have, and run with it. Practice breaking it down in your head on how it was built. Go home and replicate that. If it doesn't work out the first time, keep practicing. That's how we do this, and that's how we learn. And then whenever you come across a project that integrates several of these different things that we've broken down, it'll be a piece of pie. So as always, go out there, be creative, think divergently, and build something new. Until next time, guys, we'll see you.